In this video, I want to show you how to obtain a 5-number summary, as well as draw the visual representation of that, which is what we call a box plot, and a few other things. The problem that I'm using as an example is taken from section 3.5. It's problem number 14. You could find it on page 182 of the text. Now, whenever you're keying in data for a particular problem, you want to make sure that you don't contaminate your data with some artifact data from a previous problem. And that usually involves clearing your lists. There's two ways you can do this. Let's say, for example, you wanted to clear a list individually. You go to the Stat menu, go to Edit, and all you have to do is go up to the name of the list like that and press Clear and press Enter, and that will clear individual lists. If you wanted to clear more than one list, that's also possible. You can go back to the Stat menu, and let's say, for example, we wanted to clear list 2 and list 3. You press 4, you put in the list names that you want to clear, you press Enter, and you can see up here that the lists are now wiped. Now, I've already taken the time to key in the data from that particular problem into the list 1 here, and so the first thing I want to do is get my 5-number summary. And to get that, I would go back to the Stat menu, go to Calc, and I'll take one variable stats. If you recall, this command defaults to list 1, so if you don't input a list, it will assume that you want it to look in list 1 for whatever results. So to run it, you press Enter, and your 5-number summary is down here. You can see that the smallest data value is 90, first quartile is 101, median is 104, and so on. Now, you don't have to do this before you get a box plot, but we just want you to understand that the box plot is the visual representation of this 5-number summary. So anyway, to get a box plot, you need to go to the Stat Plot menu, and you need to turn on one of your plots. Let's just take plot number 1. Press Enter, and now you can see that the on is turned on there. Now, for the type of plot that we're looking for here, we have 2 box plots to choose from. Let me motor down there and select one of them. The first one that's flashing here is a box plot with fences. And you would use this type of box plot if you're looking for outliers in your data set. If you read in section 3.4, there's a formula for the upper and lower fences. And this type of box plot will find them for you automatically. And it will show you if you have any outliers present in the data. We're not going to use that box plot now. We're going to use the next type here, which is just a regular box plot. No outliers, no fences. To select that, you press Enter. And the data is in list 1 where it's supposed to be. The frequency is 1 as it's supposed to be. Don't ever change the frequency. Always have it at 1. Now, to get the box plot on the screen, you can go Zoom 9, and you can see that the box plot appears here. We could probably clean up the window a little bit. To do that, you press the window key. Let's round that down to 80. Let's round that up to 130. And let's change the X scale. The X scale is the distance between these hash marks on the X axis here. And you can see there's too many for the window, so let's make it 10. And now you can see that the graph is clean. To get back to the graph, you just press Graph. We could also probably clean up the y-axis a little bit. We have a little too much y-axis right there, so I'll go back to this, and let's go from 0 instead of -10. And there's my graph now. Now, if you wanted to obtain values from this, in other words, if you hadn't run the 5-number summary first, you can do that by using the trace function. And you just use the left and the right arrows to motor around. You can see that right now the cursor's on the median, and the median's 104, like we found in the 5-number summary. And so you can just go back and forth to all the different parts, the minimum value, the first quartile, whatever. And the values change there at the bottom of the screen, as you can see. Now, one of the things that's being asked in this particular question, number 14, from section 3.5, they want to know, is there some way to tell from the box plot that the data is symmetrically distributed? And the answer is, yeah, you can tell. You can look at the box plot itself and see that it's fairly symmetric. The whiskers, as we call them here, are about equally long. You can see that just by tracing here. We're at 120 right there for the largest data value. and the third quartile is 108.5. So the length of that would be, like 11.5, something like that. And then the other whisker on the left there starts at 90 and it goes up to 101, so the length is about 11. So those are about the same length. And if you look at the distance of the median from the first quartile and from the third quartile, it's also about the same. It's not exact, but it's close enough for our purposes. So that's one way to see that the data is symmetrically distributed. Another way would be to look at the histogram. Now, one of the things that's taught in this section here is that when your mean and your median are fairly close, then the data is symmetrically distributed. And when you look at the one variable stats, you can see that that's the case. Your mean is 104 and some change, and as you know, the median is also 104. So that right there would tell us that the data is more or less symmetrically distributed. But if you want to see it visually with a histogram, you could go back to the stat plot menu, and you can change plot number 1 to a histogram. It's this icon right here that's flashing. You can press enter to select it. And then to get the window the right size, you can go back and do a zoom 9. Now, it doesn't quite look symmetric here, but the calculator chose the bin width automatically. And hopefully you know by now that when you change the bin width on a histogram, it can change the appearance of it pretty dramatically. So to change the bin width on this one, you can go to the window function here. Let's change that to 80 again. And let's change that to 130. Give ourselves a little bit of breathing room here. And the x scale in this case is not the distance between the hash marks on the x-axis, it's the bin width. So for example, you could change it to 4. And if you press enter, you can see how the histogram changes. That looks fairly symmetric right there. It's not perfectly, but fairly symmetric. And if you wanted to change it to a different bin width, you just go up and say make it a 6. And again, you can see how the histogram changes. To get back to the graph, of course, go to Graph. So that's how you would obtain a 5-number summary and how you would draw the visual representation of that, which is the box plot. And you can also see how you could compare that with a histogram.